Rev up your engines!
Well, I guess Ford is following old Elon Musk and Tesla. Now they're raising the price of their electric SUVs by as much as $8,000 for the fancy ones, right? Cost of our stuff, we have to charge more. You know what I say, people? Don't buy them. I road tested one. Mach-E, right? Not an impressive vehicle. Kind of ugly looking. It was fast, but not super fast. Very cheaply made inside. It was like the early Mustangs. Understand, the early Mustangs were econo cars. They were very basic inside. They were cheap. They hardly cost anything at all. The early Mustangs, they were just modified Ford Falcons. First they came with 6, then they put V8 engines in them. It's not a luxury vehicle by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, they're all made in Mexico. Let's see, why did they make them in Mexico? Because the labor's really cheap. Why are they raising the price of $8,000? Well, they see Elon's raising the price of his, so they figured, what the heck? We'll raise the price of ours too. Whatever they can get away with for making money, right? Well, a lot of the stuff's going to bite them in the rear end. There's no arguing that. Just like the dealers, there'll be a vehicle there that maybe you list for 60, they'll sell it for 90. Well, there's a market for them, and there's hardly any of them. We'll charge whatever we want for these things. So Ford's just following Musk and raising the prices of their electric vehicles sky high. And if people are dumb enough to buy them, well, hey, they're going to keep raising the price. That's the way a capitalist society works. Until nobody buys them anymore, then they scratch their, gee, I wonder what went wrong with this one. They can have a group meeting. Well, we don't understand, Mr. Ford. We just don't understand. It just seemed to be going really well, and now all of a sudden, nobody's buying the things anymore. Andrew Moss says, what are your thoughts on a used 2012 Hyundai Santa Fe 2.4 liter, 80,000 miles for $8,000. One owner, no accidents. How reliable are they? I am not a Korean car fan. I would never buy one because I like my vehicles to last forever. You're talking about an SUV. They're all expensive. Only has 80,000 miles, and the guy's never wrecked it. Generally, those things will go 140, 150, usually without having any serious problem. And considering that the average new car is $45,000, $8,000 for a used one with one owner, that is not horrible. That said, don't believe a word anybody tells you that's selling you a car. You gotta have a guy like me check it out beforehand. We know it's wrecked, flooded, stolen, who knows? It could even be lying about the mileage. We have machines we plug in that tell us everything. So do get it checked out. And it could be an okay deal. Me, I'd go for a Toyota, but you're not gonna find a Toyota SUV in that price range from one owner. They've got a lot more for it. Maseo Mason says, Scotty, what's the best minivan? I'm thinking of getting a Honda Odyssey. Well, don't. Get a Toyota Sienna. They are 10 times better than Honda Odysseys. Honda Odysseys have had history of transmission problems, engine problems. Historically, they're dinosaur design. You get a V6 engine, it's still got a rubber timing belt. The Toyotas went to timing chains a decade and a half ago. Hondas are still putting rubber timing chains in those engines. They're just behind the times. You want to spend that kind of money, get a Toyota Sienna minivan. They're much better than the Honda Odysseys. Every customer I had that bought a Toyota Sienna was happy. Most of them with the Odysseys were not, because the transmissions went out, the engines went out, the AC went out. They had electrical problems. They are not as well built as the Toyotas by far. But at least you're staying Japanese. I wouldn't touch any of the American minivans. They're junk. Hey, Zeus says, should I use Mcguire's headlight coating after Plexus, Scotty? No, don't bother. The Plexus actually coats it and makes it UV resistant. Just use the Plexus 3 or 4 times a year, or 5 or 6 if you really want to spend time polishing. And that's what I do, and it works perfectly fine. You don't really ever want to mix 2 different things. Who knows what kind of interactions occur? That's why I get people all the time. Oh man, Scotty, what do you think about adding this thing to my fuel tank? It says it gets better gas mileage. I don't know how that stuff interacts with the gasoline that the engineers are making and the chemists, the shell and stuff. I have no idea what the interactions would be. Let's say, I want to put this in my engine oil. I don't know how that's going to react with your engine oil over time. I have no idea. The only thing I advise with that, like, you got dirty engine. My friend Bernie in Albuquerque has an ATS, and he has an oil cleaner. That's great. But you pour it in the engine, rev it up to like 1,600 RPM for 15, 20 minutes. Then you immediately shut it off and change the oil and filter. It's not staying in there long. I would never advise you to add some into your engine oil and then leave it there for 5,000 miles. Who knows what kind of interactions it would have with modern technology. So I wouldn't mix 2 ever of anything. Rob says, when should the timing chain be replaced on a 98 4Runner with a 2.7 liter 4-cylinder? Well, never, if it works fine. When the timing chains wear out of the tensioner, when you start it, they'll rattle. You don't hear any rattling? Those things, I've seen them with 500,000 miles. The original chain's still on them. As long as you change your oil regularly, it'll, won't have any problems at all. Now, if it starts rattling and running weird, you get misfire codes, and especially if you get codes for the crankshaft position sensor and the camshaft position sensor correlation code, because that means that the timing chain is stretched so much that the computer thinks the data from the crank sensor and the cam sensor is bad. Then I'd replace it. Damien Passor says, Scotty, what's your thoughts on Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars? Like the British Empire, it's a thing of the past. Rolls-Royce were the cars and the Bentleys, the big British cars. Well, guess what? The Germans have taken over. They have taken over the English cars. Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW, and Bentley is owned by Volkswagen. So the Germans got their revenge on losing the war, I guess, and bought Rolls-Royce and Bentley. They're gigantic, expensive cars for rich people that are trying to impress. Something hardly anybody has to cost a bunch of money. I mean, they're going to buy it. It's just the way that it goes. Rolls-Royce, I mean, yeah, go back 60 years ago, 70 years ago, even further than that, 80 years ago, they were the car to have, but I mean, they've been long passed by. They still make them luxury for people that have more money than sense. They want to go out and buy one, go right ahead, but you better have deep pockets, baby. They're expensive to fix, they're expensive to buy. Nanja J29 says, should I buy a 2015 Honda Civic Type R for 15,000 pounds? Okay, you must be in England, right? You got the money, buy it. They're generally going for a lot more than that. In the United States, those things are going for 40, 50, 60 grand and more. Even if you don't really want it, why not buy it and sell it to somebody else and make some profit? They're really well-made vehicles. Now, the only problem is it's a 2015. It's a little bit older. It might have the heck beaten out of it, so have a mechanic check it out first. It could be on its last legs, but they are excellent made vehicles if you want something like that. Rin says, leather seats or cloth for cold weather up north. RAV4 2011 or CRV 2011, highest trim. Well, as for, that's your choice. Those are both excellent vehicles. Get the one you like driving around in. They can both last a really long time. Cloth is much better for cold weather for two reasons. One, the leather gets really cold. Dead animal skin, right? And it will crack when it gets really cold. Regular cloth seats just get warm up faster. That's just the way that it goes. You pay so much more for leather seats. As they age, they're going to crack and go. I did a video the other day. It was on Japanese car. The thing was 23 years old. The cloth seats were still in excellent shape. You show me a 23-year-old car that's got leather seats on it, they're going to be cracked. They're going to be ripped. They're going to have holes in them. It just was an old-style luxury thing. If you want to go for looks, go ahead. But the cloth ones, really, they're more comfortable. Omar says, did your grandfather use sockets or open-enders? Well, we used all kinds of tools back in those days, But originally, of course, people had wrenches with open end on one and closed end on the others, and you'd pull on them. And then somebody invented the ratchet because it's faster. And we had ratchets even in the 60s, I suppose when he was a mechanic long before I was born, they just had regular old wrenches and hit them with hammers and do everything by hand. It was slower. We even had air ratchets back in the 60s, air tools and stuff for making it faster. It's strictly a speed thing. You can go a lot faster with a machine that goes than you can by hand. It was just a faster way of doing things. Call Singletary says, Sky, what do you think of the ZF transmission in the Ram Hemi 5.7? Do you think it'll be good for towing? Yeah, the thing is, ZF, it's an Austrian company. They make excellent transmissions. They make millions of them each year for all kinds of stuff. They know what they're doing. And I do have to say, the Dodge products that I've seen over the ages, the ones that the trannies lasted the longest were the ones that had the ZF transmissions. If you remember, back a ways, Mercedes-Benz bought Chrysler, it was called Daimler Chrysler, and they started putting some of these ZF Austrian transmissions in a lot of the trucks and stuff, and they held up quite well. They make pretty good transmissions. God loves his children, says Scotty. What do you think about Japanese sports cars like the Gtr Supra and Rx-7? The price is going up the roof. Is it still worth to buy? I would say you really got to pick and choose, because some vehicles will continue to rise because they're true classics. Others, with the used car market as crazy as it is, are way too high now and they're fall back down. The GTR and the Supra, if you get a decent enough price, they can still go up because they're never going to make them again. The real Supras, the ones now are a joke. They're not a Toyota Supra. They're a BMW Roadster made in Austria. It has nothing to do with Toyota. Who knows what will happen with them. But the Nissan GTR and the Toyota Supras, the classic ones, they're never going to make any more, and they probably will always hold their value because they are classically known. People love them, and you can do whatever you want. I knew a guy in town here, he's got a Supra, he got 1,250 horsepower, he had it bumped up. Insanity. There's always going to be people that like those cars. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.